Okay, so I was the angry little girl. Like, I was always pissed off. I was always mad, irritated, always had an attitude. And even though my anger got the most attention in childhood, because that's when people were really looking at me and paying attention to me and constantly correcting me, I wasn't actually taught how to be angry. And I went on like this for a very long time until I had my daughter. And she started to experience anger, and it triggered me like so bad. And it was so uncomfortable because I had never learned how to manage and handle that emotion. And so when I realized this, I first had to get comfortable with being angry myself. And then I had to learn healthy ways of expressing it and teach her those things as well. And so today I'm going to give you 3 strategies and communication tips that you can give your child or your preteen if you are having difficulty teaching them how to manage and express their anger. Okay, so anger is really important. It tells us that something is not right, something is off, a need is not being met. Something is really important to us. And so first I had to shift from suppressing my child's anger to teaching her angry language, right? And when I did that, her emotional intelligence increased. And even though it's something that we're still working on, because I realized this late, this one thing has made a huge difference in her capacity to regulate her anger and still express what is at the core and the root of it. And so I taught her that when you are angry, you only need to focus on expressing one of 3 things. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the first one. If you have a child that says things like, I hate you, I hate my life, I hate my sister, it can be so painful to hear. But I want you to know that underneath those very strong words, something is happening. Something is impacting your child's emotional state. And that is what needs to be validated. So you don't have to give a ton of attention either with your reaction or with your words to what they're actually saying. You can teach them to instead focus on what's happening. So that's the first one. So if my child says, I hate everything, I might coach them and redirect them and validate what's actually happening. This homework is so hard. You're having a hard time with this level in this game. You know, you don't really like what I just said. That makes sense. Now, it can be tempting to focus on what they're saying in the moment when they're dysregulated, but then they're going to focus on that and they're just going to dig their heels in even more. And so I want you to instead teach them to focus on what they're experiencing. Because I want you to imagine a time where your child can come to you and instead of saying everything sucks, they can say, this math problem is so hard. They can't do that if we don't redirect them towards language, either in the moment, if they're open to it, or if we're not able to be willing to ride the emotional wave with them and then come back after and, say earlier, you were having a really hard time with your homework. It's okay to say that. Okay, so now, question for you. Have you ever heard your child say something like, you never do this, or you always do that? This kind of catastrophizing makes their anger feel bigger, and it's often much harder for them to move into problem solving. And if you only focus on those words and give that attention, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna move into defense mode. You're gonna outline all the ways that you've done X, Y, Z in the past and how what they're saying is not true. But guess what still gets overlooked? The anger, the actual genuine feelings. And by doing that, we ignore their emotional experience and it doesn't get seen and it doesn't get heard and it stays and lies dormant and waits for the next opportunity to explode, right? And so it's tempting for us to get on the defense stand, but I want you in these moments to help your child focus on what they're feeling. And so I might say, I understand what you're saying. It sounds like you're really mad, you're really frustrated because I said I was gonna put the computer down 5 minutes ago and play with you and I still haven't. Is that true? And so now where they have started doing this, we are bringing it back down to their actual emotional experience so that over time, they are able to communicate that emotional experience with another person in a clear and concise way without catastrophizing. So number 2 is to focus on what they're feeling. Now, the last one is the one that I get sort of emotional about when I hear my child focusing on it, because it is probably the one that would have made the biggest difference in my childhood. Like, I really got choked up a month ago when we were at the store because we were at the register and my oldest said, hey, Mom, can you pay for this? And I said, no. And she said, well, you just paid for Sissy's toy. And I told her, you have money on your Apple Pay. Your sister doesn't have money. And so I would like you to use the money that I already gave you. And she was visibly mad. And so I looked at her and I said, do you understand why I'm not going to pay for it? And she didn't snap. She didn't say anything mean about her sister. She just looked at me and she said, Mom, I need a minute. Can we talk about this in the car? Baby, yes, absolutely. Because I taught her that when you want to communicate your anger, sometimes you just need to focus on what you need right now in this second. If you do not have the capacity to problem solve and talk through something because you're so angry, be willing to communicate what you need right in this moment in order to get to that place. And over time, when we teach our children to focus on these three things, it creates the most beautiful communication where they don't have to cause harm to another person because of their anger, but they also don't have to cause harm to themselves by stuffing it and suppressing it and ignoring their needs. And they can focus on what is happening, and then they can focus on what they're feeling about what's happening, and then they can focus on what they need in the moment. And they can start to say things like, hey sissy, you're touching things in my room and I asked you not to touch anything, and so I'm getting frustrated, so I want some space and we can try to play again later. Now, I know that positive, peaceful parenting is not super outcomes focused, and it isn't how to get your kid to do this and how to get your kid to do that. And with that, it can be difficult because we're playing the long game and we're seeing this as a journey and not as a sprint and a quick fix. But I'm telling you, the kind of interactions you start to see with your child, because you are willing to shift the focus from making them do things to teaching them how to do things. And how can I model this? How can I encourage this? Because it allows you to cultivate these behaviors without ignoring their emotional development. And that is so powerful. The little girl in me who was taught that anger is a bad thing, so she tried hard to suppress and would only explode, needed that and needed somebody to take the time to stop trying to change me and change the behavior, but instead teach me what it means to be powerful and assertive instead of trying to make my behavior more convenient. And so, yes, it is my desire to help my kids not catastrophize their anger, but it's also my desire to not raise people pleasers. Hope you found this helpful. If you want some more support, I have an online group coaching community, and I will leave the information in the description box below. I'll see you next time.